Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to have a look at the 21 best GameCube games. Why 21? Well, because it's kind of a theme now. To make things a little bit more interesting, we're going to stick to one game per main series franchise. For example, you can have Paper Mario and Super Mario Sunshine, but you couldn't say have Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario 64. And not only because it's not on the GameCube. As usual, the games are in no particular order, except for the last 5, which are considered to be a top 5. So the first 16 are in no order, although people will still comment saying they think something should be higher. But I'm sure you're not one of them. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things.
Out of the darkness they came with a hateful will to destroy humanity.
Created primarily by ex-Rare employees, Timesplitters was a series that was a little bit different to other first-person shooters. And Timesplitters 2 does everything that the original did and upgrades it tenfold. The storyline is completely bonkers. Basically, you have to go back in time to various different time periods on Earth to stop the Timesplitters from using the time crystals to destroy Earth or something. I mean, it's pretty vague. No doubt somebody in the comments will correct me. The single player is great, but the real thrill of this comes from the multiplayer. Grab 3 friends and you'll be shooting monkeys as gingerbread men in no time at all. You're welcome, Andre. Yes, Mario Kart Double Dash, the GameCube's answer to, well, Mario Kart. The gimmick this time is that there are 2 characters riding around on each individual kart, and it actually changes things up in a rather interesting way, particularly when you get into co-op races. Although I don't think they're called that, it's been a while. Basically, you have 2 real-life people, one controls the person driving, and one controls the character not driving, instead throwing shells and things. It's certainly nowhere near as refined as the later entries, but nevertheless, Double Dash is an incredible amount of fun, and for the time, it really was a huge upgrade on 64.
They're coming! Quick, Ven, jump up!
Beyond Good and Evil it's a weird one. Truth be told, it's one of those games that's easier to show than it is to actually describe. It's sort of an action-adventure photography game? Again, really, it's not that easy to describe. It has a phenomenal cult following, and with the announcement of Beyond Good and Evil 2 coming to some platforms, we couldn't be more thrilled to include this on our list.
Pooh, give me a cola and I need another bucket of ice cream with mini pies.
Okay, for anyone who hasn't played this game, this may seem like a weird choice to include on our top 21 list, but bear with me. The Simpsons Hit and Run is basically the best Simpsons game that's ever been released, except for maybe the arcade game, which is probably on par. In a nutshell, it's a semi-family friendly Grand Theft Auto with the cast of The Simpsons and myriad references to the main series. They may not all be references to good episodes, but nevertheless, it's nice to have them there.
Newspaper inside your head.
All this and more await you on Isle Delfino. Come relax and let us refresh your body and spirit.
Yes, it's divisive, but you can't deny that Super Mario Sunshine is still a great game, regardless of whether you think it's a great Mario game or not. Personally, when this came out, I absolutely loved it, and in some small way, I think I prefer it to Super Mario 64. That was a joke. But still, it's a great game, and it tried something new with the Mario genre, and it didn't entirely work really, but nevertheless, it's good fun, and it definitely deserves to be on this list. To anyone who's a fan of the series, I'm sure I don't need to say that Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is the quintessential Paper Mario experience. There's a whole host of really interesting characters with genuinely well-developed personalities, if you can believe such a thing. It shouldn't come as a surprise that this was developed by Intelligent Systems, the same people who brought us such games as Fire Emblem. For me personally, this is the best Mario RPG out there, completely decimating the competition. Yeah, okay, it's technically an N64 game if you want to get really technical, but nevertheless, Animal Crossing is an incredible game, even if it has been entirely superseded by the sequels. At the time of its release, there was nothing like it, and although it hasn't aged terribly well, it is still an awful lot of fun. There's no real need to go back and play it if you've got New Leaf, because honestly, New Leaf is infinitely better, but even so, for the GameCube, this is easily one of the standout titles.
Here's some mountain info for those of you out riding today. Reports in from Peak 1's high alpine state that avalanche conditions have moved into the extreme.
Do you remember when EA actually made some half-decent games? Crazy times. SSX3 is pretty much everything you could ever ask for when it comes to a snowboarding game. Bursting with content, infinitely replayable, this is basically just a snowboarding game that you have to own.
Riders will be charging hard down these newly designed, never-before-seen racetracks where the terrain borders on the insane.
Now, it was a tricky choice between Super Monkey Ball and Super Monkey Ball 2, but in the end the sequel just had to slightly take it. The original did manage to avoid the weird and awkward monkey dancing, but the sequel just has slightly more creativity when it comes to the main stages. It also has more and on the whole better mini-games, although Monkey Target 2 can die in a fire. The more recent games in the series are kind of a bit crap, but this one is one that you definitely need to play. After so many years, Luigi finally got his first solo game on the Nintendo GameCube. And no, we're not counting Mario is Missing. It's hugely atmospheric, but without actually being genuinely frightening, so still suitable for younger players, and also just incredible fun. The controls are a little bit wonky by modern standards, but if you can get past that, this is a phenomenal game to get your hands on.
Before time, before humanity. I am Dr. Edward Roivas. I am a clinical psychologist. I am also dead.
Horror games have come along an enormous way since the original things like the Atari 2600 and all that sort of thing, where nothing was actually scary. But I think the modern horror games owe more to Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem than to any other horror game out there. Although it may well not have been the first to do so, it was the first to popularize the idea of going meta. I don't want to give too much away, but if you put this disc into your console, your GameCube may look like it's starting to have some issues. It's all perfectly safe, of course, but well, again, I can't really say anything. Just play it and enjoy it. Alright, that's not a good look for Tony, is it? But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 may look a little bit weird, and it seems like an odd choice for this list, but even so, this is a game that even today pretty well stands up. There's something incredibly cathartic about just riding around on a skateboard, doing impossible tricks, and just basically making a fool of yourself as much as possible. The whole thing that is trying to get off as being cool and skater may well have aged as well as a wet tissue, but even so, this is a wonderful game. Probably the best skating game ever. Remember when Nintendo consoles got real third-party support? Good times. Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes is the retelling of the original Metal Gear Solid, not the original Metal Gear, and by crumbs is it good. It's very Hideo Kojima in the sense that it's more like an interactive film than it is an actual game, but even so I think this probably has some of the most content when it comes to actual gameplay for the series. It solves a lot of the problems of the original release and is overall just a fantastic game. Get it. Oh, it was tough picking between Pikmin and Pikmin 2, but in the end, Pikmin 2 just about stole it. Apart from graphically, this game has not aged a day. And in my opinion, the original GameCube controls are better than the Wii controls. I'm just gonna say it. It doesn't quite have the tension of the original, given that you're really not that restricted in terms of time, but the addition of Louie and also the addition of multiplayer makes this an incredible experience. But if you can't get this one because it's ludicrously expensive, the original is almost just as good. When I had my original GameCube, I longed for Soul Calibur 2. I didn't even really know what the gameplay was like at the time. I just knew that Link was in it and that it was a fighting game, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And you know what? It still is. I've never quite been able to get good at the game, but even so, I absolutely love playing it to death. And Soul Calibur 2 having Link in it makes this, in my opinion, the best one. Although admittedly, I haven't played them all. But it's got Link in it, so, you know, nah.
You win! Battle 2, fight!
Can you believe that before I was instructed to put this in the list by my boss, I had never played a Burnout game before? Or if I have, I definitely can't remember doing so. But I can absolutely agree that this demands to be on this list. It's basically a racing game that encourages you to be as reckless as possible. And whilst that might not be a good message to send to children, good lordy is it fun! Driving around at breakneck speeds and encouraging you to drive on the correct side of the road, the left, makes this game unparalleled in its adrenaline rush. Well, there you go. But what about this top 5 that we've been bleating on about all through the intro? Well, here it is. And these are in order. When it comes to being fast, there isn't a racing game on the GameCube that can even come close to F-Zero. And can you believe it? F-Zero GX wasn't even developed by Nintendo. I think this is easily the best racing game on the system, even outing Mario Kart, because it is just that good. It's initially a little bit more forgiving than the N64 version, but even so, this thing, when you get later into the game, is one tough cookie. If you've never played an F-Zero game before, what are you even doing with your life?
$1998. I'll never forget it. It was the year when those grisly murders occurred in the Arklay Mountains.
This was a tough one, but for us, when it comes to Resident Evil, 4 is pretty much the king. The controls have not aged well, but to be honest, it's almost to the game's benefit. The limited controls makes every encounter even more intimidating and even more intense. Get this game.
I said freeze!
Yes, how could we leave this game out? It is so classic and so amazing, and it comes so far from the original. It's so good that there is still a huge legion of people playing it to this day. And even if you don't understand all the wave dashing and drop and cancel and flight and thing, it's still an enormous amount of fun. I think this game is solely responsible for the GameCube adapter for the Wii U being even a thing. Yes, it was only used for Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, but enough people were clamoring for it that it happened. Is it the best Smash Bros. Game ever? Well, in my opinion, not quite, but in a lot of people's opinion, definitely. This one was a tough one. I know there are so many people out there who love Twilight Princess to death, and don't get me wrong, it was very tough to pick between this and this. But in the end, Wind Waker just had to win it by the merest of margins for being just so different. Apart from Breath of the Wild, it's probably the boldest move away from the traditional Zelda formula, especially visually. I remember back in the day this was even referred to as New Zelda, with a C, spelled like this. The cel-shaded graphics were a huge point of contention, and yet Nintendo still managed to turn it around and say, no, we're gonna make something amazing. And even to this day, it just looks amazing. I don't think you could say the same thing about Twilight Princess. Yes, it was pretty much a guarantee that this was absolutely going to be in the top 5, but for us, it's undeniable. It's number 1. Retro Studios did the impossible. They took an entirely 2D game and transferred it to 3D, made it entirely new, entirely different. First person, they took something as quintessential as Metroid, something that so many people loved. They managed to change it entirely, but still make it the same kind of game. It's a miracle this even exists and is as good as it is. There's just absolutely no game like this out there. The attention to detail, the immersion, it was all too much to take back in the years of the GameCube. It's not just one of the best GameCube games ever, it's one of the best games ever. And there you have it. Those are the 21 best GameCube games of all time ever. Do you agree with this list, or do you think it's total pig swill? Let us know down there in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you slave away over 2 machines all weekend just to get some footage? For that, subscribe button, and be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.